Hello, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing the second review breakdown of the second episode of The Rings of Power Season 2. Okay, so let's just get into this day, Ian. I'll be reading from my notes again, so if you see me glancing down, that is why. So this time it opens with Mount Doom in Mordor, the volcano kind of exploding and being active, and then we transition into like the Middle Earth map, and then you can see like this dark kind of inky, smoky thing going across the map, and then it goes towards Khazad-dûm. This is obviously signifying that whatever happened in Mordor in the volcano, darkness is spreading through Middle Earth, and it is now affecting Khazad-dûm. In Khazad-dûm, we are with Disa and Durin, who are in a bustling market, which looks so cool. I really enjoyed that market. I love it when you do world building and you just add random markets, and it kind of makes the world feel more whole. And we never really, in the Lord of the Rings or the Hobbit films, get to see a working mine. Not the gardening, not how they buy and sell and what they wear and where they got their, food and clothes and jewelry and anything from. So it's really nice, I think, within this TV series, the first one and now this one, that we're exploring what the dwarfs' minds look like when they're actually active and lived in, rather than when they are just rubble and taken over by Balrogs and orcs and the enemy. So that's kind of cool. I really enjoy this. They're in a bustling market, and Durin calls himself an outcast after the events of season 1 with his dad. Disa senses something is wrong, and she starts feeling the ground, and then the ground beneath them shakes, and then this is, I think this is an earthquake. So what happens is after the earthquake, boulders start falling and collapsing bridges, and I think you actually see some dwarfs die, which was horrible to see actually, because I don't really like it's just dying in TV series for no reason. And with the boulders coming down, you can see like the tiny little CGI ant looking dwarfs running away, and then some of them fall when the boulders go down, which is sad. But I think this is why it's good to do world building, because it draws you and makes you feel something for these characters where you otherwise wouldn't. So the sun mirrors are also hit, I think, by this earthquake, and then they start collapsing, and you can see the beams of light from these sun mirrors that are providing light in the mountain start dimming and going, and this plunges Khazad-dûm into darkness and all who reside within. Also, I have to say, I actually like Disa and Durin quite a bit. I think that they are really, really nice, and to see a couple who both wind each other up, but also make each other see sense, and they obviously have a great deal of care for each other, and I think you don't really see that much in The Lord of the Rings outside of Aragorn and Arwen. So, I also noticed details on Disa's dress. The fabric, it kind of sparkles. I think it's very pretty, and I think this shows the work that goes into this TV show. I know some people think the TV show is not good, or it's cheap, or whatever, and I actually agree, some costumes do look a little cheap, but I think when it comes to Disa, to make her stand out as a dwarf princess, I think they do a really good job. I think that they're like stars, they sparkle like stars, and it is beautiful, and I think it's one of those small attentions to detail that really make a TV series feel complete. Along with that world building, poor dwarfs. So then we cut then to Lindon, and we're back with Gladriel. She's in like that forest thing in Lindon where the graves are, where her brother's grave is, in the wood, in the trees. Except from this time, Celebrimbor shows up, and he informs Gladriel of an unexpected visitor being Sauron. He doesn't say this, and he doesn't say Halbrand either, but what is clear at this point is that they're not actually here, and this is more of a dream vision that Gladriel's getting, based off the rings, which I'll talk about in a minute. Then they are both entwined as roots start, crawling towards them, and then they start entwining Gladriel and Celebrimbor. As this happens, Celebrimbor says, "Are they not the seeds you planted?" Which I think is a good question, because this it kind of makes you think, is this all Gladriel's fault? I would personally say no, but also yes. So the show is exploring the complexity of people's decisions and the fallout that came from these characters made in season 1. Gladriel didn't ask to be picked up by the Númenóreans and their ship, and she didn't, ask to be run into Halbrand in the Sundering Seas. So she didn't really ask for any of this to happen to her, but those are what happened. And when she did find Halbrand in the Sundering Seas, that is when I think the influence over her began, when she let him in. Going to Númenor obviously wasn't also her plan, especially since the Númenóreans hate the elves. So no, that wasn't Gladriel's fault, but yes, I suppose it is her fault that she takes Halbrand with her to Middle-earth when she convinces the Númenóreans to go over to Middle-earth and help defeat whatever evil, which I think she thought was Sauron. So little did anybody know Sauron was right there next to them, leading the charge to his own people, posing as a king, obviously. But again, as it gets pointed out too later on in the episode, Halbrand really never said that he was the king of the south. That is what Galadriel pieced together based on her own wants and desires to be the hero and finally vanquish Sauron. Of course, also with Galadriel taking Halbrand to Middle-earth, he was eventually able then to make himself over to Eregion, which is where he started crafting these rings in the first place. So I guess when Celebrimbor says, are these not the seeds you planted? Yes, I would say they are, but not intentionally. Galadriel's dream vision then turns nasty, and there's like this whole red lighting, which we saw in the trailers, and Celebrimbor is killed and turned into a tree grave as she screams out in horror. We then cut to Galadriel in her waking life, caressing her ring as the High King and the Council are gathering around creating battle plans to attack Adar. So they believe that Halbrand, who was last spotted in Mordor, is trying to overrun Adar and reclaim his position as the leader over there. But we know he's actually not trying to overrun the camp and take himself back into position there, because we know that he's already gone off to Eregion and is starting to manipulate Celebrimbor. But Galadriel thinks that Sauron is in Eregion. That is when the High King says he doesn't agree, and he doesn't think that Halbrand or Sauron is in Eregion. So the High King and Galadriel then discuss the effect of wearing these rings. So I think this is the first time we're seeing any effects on the elves. Obviously, they restored Lindon in the first episode, which was beautiful, but now we're starting to see the other little gifts that these rings can give a wearer, like visions of the future, and not very good ones, and I think this creates worry and distrust amongst the elves. So yes, the High King is saying that he's getting visions of the futures yet not to pass, and they're both getting these kind of bad and eerie visions. The High King also mentions mountains in his visions, mountain crumbling, and waters drying up, clouds black and gathering over white towers. Now, I think the mountains crumbling is obviously Khazad-dûm. I'm not really sure what the waters drying up is, but I do think that clouds gathering over white towers is alluding to Númenor and the fall of Númenor. Then Galadriel says that she alone is the only one who can slay Sauron, as she knows his mind after their connection at the end of season 1. The High King says, you cannot face him alone, and Galadriel says, suppose I'm not alone, as in, let's do this again, let's build a company and let's go back after Sauron, which we see in the trailers, but more on that later. I think that in the trailers we see them in the forest, and I think that's meant to be the company of Galadriel, but whose company is it? We do find out. Then it cuts back to Eregion, and we see Halbrand or Sauron refuses to actually leave Eregion after being denied entry. Very softly, Celebrimbor didn't come out himself. He sent that elf female to go tell Halbrand to go away in the polite way. But Halbrand doesn't want to leave and eventually gains the elves' sympathy by staying outside and being cold in the dark, blah, 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 trying to pull on their heartstrings. Later, he also manipulates Celebrimbor into believing the High King has discarded him now that he has the ring and he's got no more use for him. And Celebrimbor actually starts to believe this. And Sauron is corrupting Celebrimbor here and begins to convince him that he doesn't need the agreement of the High King to actually make any more rings. And without the message from the High King warning that Halbrand is actually Sauron, how is Celebrimbor meant to know? And this is why he's believing Halbrand's manipulation. Again, all he knows at this point is that Galadriel said not to trust Halbrand, doesn't know why. Then we return to Rhûn, and we see people dressed like the Dweller from season 1, who are called the Mystics, by the way. I didn't know this. They are called the Mystics, those 3 women in white, and the main one is called the Dweller. Here, they are performing a ritual of dark magic, and I think it's like a blood ritual here. And we see once again the wizard, this dark wizard, and he finishes the ritual off, and the Dweller is resurrected from all those moths and fireflies. He then asks what tidings from the White Wings, and I think this is, again, maybe another name for the Mystics, or the Dweller, as in, like, what news from the White Wings? Like, what did they know when they went out and then got destroyed? The Dweller says, Sauron has taken a new form to deceive his enemies. So that means Halbrand. The Dark Wizard also here asks, and this is really important, he says, and the Istari, as in he's asking about the Istari as in the stranger. Now it's time for a little break from the review just to go over some history about the Lord of the Rings and Tolkien's mythology, just in case you don't know. Feel free to skip ahead if you do know this, but those of you who don't know it, stay and watch. So, the Istari are a group of Maya sent to Middle-earth by the Valar in the Third Age or late Second Age. Now, we know this TV series is taking place in the Second Age, so I guess we're in the late Second Age if Mayas are starting to send the Istari down. Now we know that they are sending Istari down because the Dark Wizard character just said, what about the Istari in reference to the stranger? They were entrusted to aid the free people against the threat of Sauron's conquest. Now it gets a little bit more complicated, so I'm going to rely on reading off my script and you guys having visuals in the pictures you can see around me. So the king of Valar, Manwë, began to believe that Melkor Morgoth, his successor, Sauron, aka currently Halbrand, was returning to power. So he summoned a council whose decision concluded that they would send 3 emissaries to Middle-earth. When they told the Maya of this plan, only 2 of them stepped forward to volunteer to go to Middle-earth. Those 2 were Kurumo, which is the Mayan name for Saruman, and Alatar, who is one of the Blue Wizards. But we obviously, in Lord of the Rings and Hobbit, don't actually ever get to see any of the Blue Wizards in action, nor do we hear their Middle-earth name. They were the only 2, so Saruman and Alatar were the only 2 Maya to actually volunteer. So the King of Valar, Manwë, decided he would summon Elorion, who is Gandalf. But Elorion didn't want to go, and was basically forced to go to Middle-earth. Now, someone called Yavanna asked Saruman to take with him to Middle-earth Iwendil, who is Radagast. And lastly, Alatar took his friend, the other Blue Wizard, Palando. Just in case that still confused you, a little tiny breakdown, more simpler. Saruman took Radagast with him, Alatar took Palando with him, and the king asked basically Gandalf to go down to Middle-earth. And there you have the 5 Istari who come to Middle-earth. Now back to some more mythology, just real quick, and then we'll get back to the review. What is the east, or what is in the east of Middle-earth? It's Rhûn. So, are we going to see the Blue Wizards crop up soon? So I'm kind of questioning. I know people think maybe the stranger could be Gandalf. I don't think it's Gandalf. What I think it is possibly one of the 2 Blue Wizards. And if he is one of the 2 Blue Wizards, where on earth is the other one? Who is the Dark Wizard? So theories at the moment are that he could possibly be the Witch King, or will become the Witch King, and also people think he's Saruman. I'm not convinced he is Saruman though. Anyway, back to the episode. The Dark Wizard wants to get back to the stranger before he actually realizes his power and his full potential. Maybe this means the Dark Wizard could be Saruman if he was one of the first to go down. Maybe he's already realized his potential, but Saruman was never instantly corrupted by evil, and he was on everyone's side, as we see in The Hobbit. So anyway, the riders of Rhûn say that they will succeed where the mystics failed, because they will go after Nori and Poppy and tell basically hold them hostage and tell the stranger that they're gonna kill Nori and Poppy if the stranger doesn't come with them. Then we go to Nori, Poppy, and the stranger, who have some funny scenes when they're trying to pick out the stranger's name. Nori says they'll find out who he is, and for our sake, I hope we do too, and I hope it is in this season that we find out who he is, because I'm not sure they can stretch the mystery of the stranger over to a 3rd season, if that is even going to happen. So, the stranger hears on the wind hooves. So the trio pack up and hide. The riders of Rhûn search for them in this area, and they can't find them because they're all hidden under their, tent, grassy thing to make themselves look hidden. So then the group decide they are going to change direction and head into the barren-looking desert rather than continue on the safer path because they have been found out. Then we get back to Khazad-dûm, and the people are in danger. There's no food because there's no sunlight to grow anything, and as they say, the crops have started to wither. Now, here is really interesting because there's 2 female dwarves who are walking towards Disa before they start doing the singing ceremony, and they say dark omens across all the dwarven grounds have started to happen. And this is obviously a reference back to the beginning of the episode when we saw the map and how it spread out. So it's interesting here that the other dwarf kingdoms are also probably starting maybe either to have the same problem as this particular dwarf kingdom in Khazad-dûm, or other things are starting to happen to the other dwarfs. King Durin, who asks for a report about the mountain, not from Disa, from another guy. They've already basically figured out that an eruption in Mordor from the volcano Mount Doom has caused their sun shafts to collapse, and now they need to repair the sun shafts. Disa says that every stone singer that has been brought to the council so far has failed to find a safe pathway for them to get to the sun shafts, so now they try. Disa here tries and fails. This is also a big deal for the character, but also for the mountain. And after she fails, Disa urges King Durin to speak to his son, Durin. Durin is mining in the mountain, but with his group of miners, and they keep hitting dead ends and they can't find a way out or a way safely. After a tense but loving talk with Disa, Durin decides that the dwarves in Khazad-dûm are out of options and so must turn back to the elves for help, after Celebrimbor sends them a message that says they need to go to Eregion. Okay, then we cut back to Galadriel and Elrond, who are still squabbling. Not the best, but we'll make do. Galadriel reveals she can't go to Eregion without Elrond, and surprise, surprise, Elrond doesn't want to go. Elrond says how Sauron played the song that was already in Galadriel's heart, telling Galadriel she wasn't manipulated fully, and how Celebrimbor has also fallen for this. And as long as Galadriel has that ring, she is under Sauron's influence. Galadriel assures Elrond that she cannot let Sauron back in again, and Elrond says he never left. In choosing to wear these rings, you have all chosen to become his collaborators. Elrond refuses to help again and turns Galadriel away for the sake of the friendship, if it ever meant anything to Galadriel. And it's kind of sad seeing Galadriel kind of walk away, because she's acknowledging they're still friends and that the friendship did mean something to her and hopefully Elrond. Now Elrond goes to speak back with Círdan, who is wearing the red ring, and he's that's the shot in the trailers with the red ring and putting his hand in the river. And here Círdan is basically saying that look how life kind of swarms to these rings and responds to these rings. Says that these rings are clearly powerful rings, and this is why they should stay in the hands of elves. Círdan here also convinces Elrond to help, and basically convinces him to go to Eregion with Galadriel, or whatever company is going with them. Then we're back to our trio, the Stranger, Nori and Poppy, who are all dehydrated and on the brink of death passing through this desert. And they look very dehydrated, and I think that the makeup team have done very good. Very chapped lips all around for everybody. And I think that is another funny scene. I can't help but smile when Nori and the Stranger and Poppy are on, even when things aren't going well for them. I just like it. I like them. I like these three so much. And I hope they get more screen time, but they might not. I'll just shut up and continue talking, but they might not. Anyway, so Poppy finds a well with water in the middle of a desert, and if that's not a trap, then I don't know what is. So they go to it, and here the trio drink from the well, and I think it is a trap set by the Dark Wizard or the Riders of Rune or someone else. Because as you pull water up from this well, this rope with a stone on goes like this, and it starts smacking the bell, ringing it in the whole of the desert to hear exactly where you are, and it gets faster and faster, so the bell starts ringing faster and faster. So I think this is probably a clever trap, but it is stupid that the trio didn't stop the bell from ringing when it first started. I mean, you could have just probably held the rope, took the stone off, and then pulled the water up without the stone continuously smacking the bell to alert everybody to their presence. Here the Stranger also finds a suspicious staff that looks like it's been purposely laid out, but it looks like the one from his dream. So he picks it up, and then the trio are ambushed by the Riders of Rune. They fire arrows at the Stranger, who then has no choice but to use this staff, and a tornado-like spell is created, which blows away the riders, and eventually Nori and Poppy, who we now don't actually see again from this point in this episode. So now I'm actually worried about their fate. Are they actually dead? Surely they can't survive a tornado which sends them so high into the sky. I mean, they scream and go upwards, and they're only half-foots. Also, just to support that they could possibly be dead, I have two theories. One theory is they're dead because from the trailers we see the Stranger is talking with Tom Bombadil without Nori and Poppy present. So I think that's sad. My other theory is that maybe Nori and Poppy end up with the Ents, and that is who the Ent is talking to in the trailer. Okay, we then go to Eregion, and Celebrimbor has created Ithildine, which is the material, I believe, that allows you to only see something in the moonlight, which I think happens in The Lord of the Rings or Hobbit, with the map with Elrond, and they raid it in the moonlight. It's here then we actually get those scenes of Celebrimbor being manipulated by Sauron. I'm not sure if Sauron actually made it rain. There's a shot where Halbrand looks up into the sky and then all of a sudden it starts raining and the colder weather comes in, which is what makes Celebrimbor sympathize with him. And maybe that's just how they made it look in the edit. I'm not actually sure if Sauron can control the weather. He's not a mutant. He is not Storm. So I don't know if he can. Anyway, after tricking Celebrimbor, Halbrand asks Celebrimbor if Celebrimbor is his friend. It's here that he reveals himself. He wants Celebrimbor to make rings for men. Celebrimbor says the dwarfs won't give him any more mithril, and Halbrand says, well, I think you'll find they're stuck in a dilemma all of their own. So I'm questioning if he set that up too, but I'm not sure how in touch with Middle-earth Sauron is, because I don't think he can make the mountain of Mount Doom explode and then start messing up Khazad-dûm, which he knows somehow is where the mithril is, which he would need to make rings to control people with. I'm not sure how much of this he is setting up, or if this is all just going luckily in his favour at this point, and these things keep happening, and he's like, well, there's an earthquake that I felt, and the dwarves are screwed, so they're going to give us mithril, so let's manipulate them. It's also here that we get a really cool scene, which is where Halbrand stops being Halbrand and transitions into Anatar. Halbrand says, my name isn't Halbrand, Gladriel discovered the truth, but cast me out. So he doesn't want to risk the same thing happening with his friend, Celebrimbor. So Celebrimbor says, you're not a king. And Halbrand admits he's not a king, or a man, or a mortal, and reveals soon everything will fall, and that the rings of power are the only last hope for restoring the light of Middle-earth. Celebrimbor says, you can't expect me to believe you're a messenger sent by the Valar, and then he's interrupted by the weather at this point. And again, I think, is Sauron in control of the weather? Because at that point, why on earth would the storm just thunder, lightning, and then the window of the balcony slams open at that point, and then Celebrimbor has to interrupt himself, and then, go and close the window. But when he turns around, Sauron isn't actually sat where he was. And has he teleported now? I don't know if Sauron can actually teleport. I don't know if he can control the weather. But he's making the X-Men team up all by himself at this point. So I'm not sure if he can, maybe he just quickly scuttled off his chair and ran away to go stand up on the balcony in the darkness, ready to become the god Anatar, or the godlike form Anatar. Not that Anatar is a godlike form. I'll get to it. Celebrimbor says, Halbrand, to no answer. Then Celebrimbor knocks over his first age wine that he was drinking with Halbrand. So Eagle Eyes and people with good memory might remember that Adar said he drank wine with Sauron, but that ended up in betrayal and death. Now, this is where I would say it's deliberate that Celebrimbor is drinking wine with Sauron, a first age red wine, which is the type of wine that Sauron drank with Adar. And of course, as I say, that led to betrayal and death, and this is foreshadowing what is going to happen with Celebrimbor, and I think I might be overlooking it, maybe, but things are put into shows for a reason, and I think this is definitely a foreshadowing of what is to come for Celebrimbor by giving in to Sauron, letting him in, and he, like Adar did, and as it turned into betrayal and death for Adar, it's going to become betrayal and death for Celebrimbor. So I think that's really smart. And I think that you probably should not share a glass of red wine with any form that Sauron takes. Anyway, Celebrimbor continues to call out for Halbrand into the dark and empty room until the fire blows out in the forge, and Celebrimbor is left standing completely alone in the dark in a storm. Then the fire roars to life, and Sauron's voice echoes, speaking another prophecy, playing into Celebrimbor's ego and telling him that only he can be the one to save Middle-earth. This is obviously corrupting and manipulating Celebrimbor, playing the song of his own heart, his own wants, his own desires, because he obviously feels discarded and maybe useless by the High King, and he wants to prove himself to the elves that he is actually someone they should take recognition of, and someone who is important. So again, Sauron has identified this and is now playing into Celebrimbor's inner thoughts, inner feelings, and manipulating him darn successfully at it too. Before appearing godlike, like I said, I would get onto it, in this new form of an elf again. Sauron says how Celebrimbor will not be overlooked by the High King, and he will be forevermore known as the Lord of the Rings. And this scene, and when he says this is quite epic, this shot. The halo forms around Anatar's head, and it's very godlike, surrounded by the smoke of the fire that is turned into clouds, and it looks it's very reminiscent of religious paintings. And I think it's playing right into Celebrimbor's wants and desires. I mean, if anybody appears to you like this, as if a prophecy has landed from the heavens itself and is saying, you're going to be the one to be the Lord of the Rings, you're the only one that can have the rings of power, you're the only one who can save everyone, I think your ego would be A, mighty boosted, and B, successfully manipulated you will be. Celebrimbor then asks what he should call Sauron, and Sauron basically says, you can call me Anatar, the Lord of Gifts. Now, once again, Sauron is in disguise, no longer Halbrand, but now Anatar. And I actually think this is good. And I think that the way they have made the actor look, even I, for a second, thought that they might be a different actor. What a difference a haircut can make, or in this case, an elvish hairstyle can make to your face. Because honestly, sometimes I'm looking and I'm thinking, is that the same actor that was Halbrand? Yes, it is. So I can see how maybe now when Galadriel's company, sent by the High King, go to Eregion, I can see how they might be manipulated. I don't know if they will be. From the trailers, you can see that Eregion looks to be under fire and attack in future episodes, and obviously there's war happening with Galadriel and Elrond. So I'm not sure if they go to Eregion and Galadriel and Elrond can see through Halbrand's new Anatar disguise, but that is for a different episode. I haven't seen those yet, and I will know more, as everybody will, when we can start seeing them. Okay, so this episode then ends with the High King saying that Elrond will actually be the leader of the company that we see in the trailers, not Galadriel. So a few questions for the end of this episode. Will they figure out that Anatar is Halbrand, who is of course Sauron, and are Nori and Poppy alive? Is the stranger one of the Blue Wizards? Alright then, that's the end of the second episode. Again, I think this was a really good episode. I think this series so far is going really well. I'm intrigued, I'm interested. I have actually seen between episode 1 and 2 my reviews. I have obviously watched the third episode, and I'm aware at this point in time that the fourth episode is already out, which I haven't seen yet. But I've seen online that viewership figures is not as good for the Rings of Power Season 2 as it was in Season 1, and people are starting to worry maybe Season 3 won't even be made. So I'm hoping we get a good enough answers in this season, so if they do cancel Season 3, which I think would be stupid, if they do cancel Season 3, hopefully Season 2 ends up with enough closure for us all. But yeah, that was worrying to see the numbers dwindling, so people need to start watching it again, otherwise we could have another thing taken away from us. I'm still not over the Dark Crystal being cancelled on Netflix. Oh, that was a good TV show. Oh well. Alright, that was my review for the second episode. I shall be doing a third episode review shortly. Hopefully I will put that up within this weekend, and then I can start getting on to the fourth and fifth episode next week. Alright, thanks for watching. Leave a comments below if you noticed anything I didn't, if you share the same kind of ideas that I have about who these characters are, or if you disagree, just let me know down below. Okay, see you in the next one. Bye!